So I'd like to start off by saying welcome to everyone and thank you for attending another MassMEDIC virtual town hall. I'm Rachel Robinson, Vice President of MassMEDIC, and I'm thrilled to see all of you again virtually. At least, we're all still hoping for the day where we'll get to see each other in person, but this is a really great second best option. So before we get started, just a few housekeeping reminders. Make sure to keep yourself on mute unless you are speaking. We'd like to minimize the background noise for our speakers. And we do absolutely encourage questions. So the best way to do that is to pop them into the chat at the bottom of the screen. There'll be a time for Q&A at the end. And we'd really love to hear from you what you would like to know from our speakers. This is a great opportunity. We have a wealth of knowledge on this particular program especially. So feel free to pop in anything that comes to mind, and we'd be happy to answer as many as possible. So with that, I am going to turn things over to Brian Johnson, President of MassMEDIC.
Thanks, Rachel. Welcome everybody again to our MassMEDIC virtual town hall. It's great to see you all again. As we're kind of rounding into this next phase of our 2020 adventure, rest assured we'll continue to bring you the best we can in terms of programming to keep you up to date on everything MedTech in New England. Just a couple quick things before we start. MassMEDIC, we just announced we have a medical device immersion class, sort of a week-long virtual MedTech 101, help you onboard any new employees to the industry. This is a great program that we just announced. It's going to be in December. We're going to send out some more information about that, but it's up on the website right now. And secondly, I'm really pleased today to bring a good friend of ours, Jason Cordero. He's the Vice President of Business Operations at MassBio, and he is really the steward of our New England Edge program that MassMEDIC was thrilled to become a part of this year in 2020. The New England Edge is an incredible purchasing program led by some of the best scientific vendors in the space, as well as many other vendors. This is a great program for all our MassMEDIC members, and we wanted to make sure to once again kind of bring you a little bit more information on that, because I think it's a critical program that if you are a member of MassMEDIC, you should be taking advantage of significantly, because you're going to save a ton of money. And also, you're just going to get to work with some of the best folks in the business. I am thrilled to welcome Jason to our town hall to give us a little chat about that, update us on what's new over at the New England Edge. Jason, how you doing?
Great. Thanks, Brian. And hi, everybody. It's nice to see you all. Thanks for tuning in today. I won't take up too much of the time this afternoon, but I do want to run through some of the benefits. I'm going to share my screen here. If you bear with me for a moment. So as Brian had mentioned, we have formed an alliance with MassMEDIC, and you guys can see my screen.
Yes, but it just says end of slideshow. Click. There you go.
Oh. There we go. All right, sorry about that. So, really, this is a benefit of your MassMEDIC membership. There's no additional cost, and it's really how we leverage the entire life science industry here in the region to save money, get preferable terms on critical supplies and services. So I just want to talk a little bit about how we help you guys take advantage of that. So really what we have in place, the key thing for you to take away today is that we have a person for you all to reach out to, your teams to work with. His name is Steve Powell. He's on our team. He is focused on all of our EDGE programs, working with MassMEDIC members to take advantage of the program. So essentially what he's going to help you to do is facilitate introductions with our partners. He's going to talk with you and your teams about how to go about identifying some of these vendors that might make sense, some areas where you can save money, also save you guys time. So he's going to help really be a member of your team and really drive some of these conversations forward so that your team doesn't have to get too involved, but he'll help you get to the goal line, and then we'll introduce the folks that make the most sense. just do a little highlight of some of our key partners here that you can take a look at. Major partner with Fisher Scientific and really Thermo Fisher Scientific across the board. They are a huge supporter of the New England Edge. They have truly competitive pricing and terms for our members and for the MassMEDIC members as well. The great thing about the partnerships that we've created here is that it's not just for the big companies that are members of the program, like your major pharmas or med device companies. Our focus is really on the small and emerging markets, the companies that really need the support. We're here as sort of an outsourced procurement team for you, where we are negotiating these terms on your behalf. And all of our vendors know that the most important companies to us are the ones that need the most assistance, and those small and emerging companies. So that's where their focus really is, whether it's Fisher Scientific, Veolia for any of your waste removal, hazardous or medical, they're all here to help you. So, and whether you're in a lab doing wet lab work or even for your office, we have relationships for that may work for everybody. So WB Mason and Castle Integration is a great partner for IT managed services. And again, they really are focused on those emerging companies. We also have some journals and subscriptions that you guys can all take advantage of. And then this is really just a little bit about how we take advantage of the program. Again, reach out to Steve, utilize the resource here, reach out to Rachel. She certainly has been huge for us to work with, coordinating members. All of the meetings that we have had with the MassMEDIC membership already have been really great. We've shown some strong savings and the partnership is going to continue to grow. So we're really, really excited about it. Another way to take advantage of it or to find all of the information about our specific vendors is if you go to massmedic.com, you will find a New England Edge section that will bring you to our connector. On the connector, you can click in, you can read about the offers, what the deals are, what the discounts are, and you can even connect directly with the reps there and ourselves. We're always on top of that and making sure that we are following up for you guys. So we're here as your ally to make sure that our vendors and our partners are always performing the best for you guys. And then lastly, if there is anything, so, we're really also driving our partners to think a little bit more about the med device industry. What can they do? How can we tweak our contracts to make sure that they're really specifically driving in on the med device industry? So we're going to continue to work on that, but we love feedback from you guys to tell us how we continue to grow and make this thing better and more valuable for your industry, for really for all of the life sciences. And if there are specific areas that we haven't addressed, then we'll help. We'll put out an RFP and we'll find some new partners that make sense for everybody. So that's the last sort of call to action. And if you have any questions, reach out to anybody here or Rachel, and we will certainly help you out.
Thanks, Jason.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And I, just to add, if you think that you're potentially interested and you're not sure, the best thing you can do is reach out to myself and have a conversation with Steve, because even if you think it's not applicable to what you're doing, there's very real chance that there is some kind of savings for you to get just having a membership. And absolutely that feedback that Jason mentioned, right? We're trying to help make this program even more efficient for the med device community. And Jason and his team have been so gung-ho about that, but we need feedback, right? Who are the vendors that are really important to the med tech community and med device specifically, and how can we get them involved and get great partnerships that are going to save you a ton of money? So that's just my small plug. We'd love the chance to talk to you about it, even if you're not sure that it's the right thing for you. So with that, I think we're ready to kick off some awesome content, and I am incredibly excited for the program today. First, I have to say thank you to Triple Ring Technologies. Triple Ring has been instrumental in helping us pull this program together today. They are a valued member and an excellent partner. So I've got to start off by saying thank you to them. We could not have done it without them. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Walt from Triple Ring, who will take us through the program. Please encouraging questions. Put those questions in the chat. We want to hear from you.
Great, thanks Rachel, and thanks everybody for joining us. I really appreciate it. We really appreciate MassMEDIC for reaching out to Triple Ring and having us host today's event, or me moderate it anyway. My name's Walt Cheka. A quick introduction. I'll introduce myself, then introduce our panelists who will be providing the most of the content and the really hopefully really informative and fun information about our medical device practice spaces. I am a mechanical engineer by training. I've been with Triple Ring for about 12 years after a career of lots of startups in med tech, starting with Nellcor and going through Colestech, a heart assist pump company, and then working for a number of years at Nectar Therapeutics, developing inhaled insulin and inhaled antibiotic products. Upon coming to Triple Ring, then I've been working in here for about 12 years, doing all sorts of stuff from business development. I'm a practice lead here now, which means I help run the medical device practice at Triple Ring. We have probably 100 engineers all together at Triple Ring working on medical devices and some commercial products as well, but mostly it's in the med tech space. With that, that's probably enough about me, I guess. Let's get into our panelists, and let's start with Eve. And maybe you can introduce yourself, Eve, and then we'll get to Steve's, the two Steves, Steve M and Steve W. Eve?
Yeah, thank you, Walt. My name is Ibrahim Badejo. People call me Eve. I am the new venture lead for Johnson & Johnson Medical Devices out of Cambridge, responsible for identifying, diligence, transacting, and alliance management on early stage pre-human assets. I've been doing this role now of course, I'm based in Cambridge. I've been doing this role now for about 6 years. But prior to that, I was the chief scientist of Closure Medical in Raleigh, North Carolina, a company that Johnson & Johnson acquired for about $340 million in 2005. And then after the acquisition, I became a fellow, which is the highest level within Johnson & Johnson for technical leadership, and led the front-end innovation team efforts there, and also did a lot of diligence and BD work for Ethicon prior to my current role. So it is a pleasure for me to be part of this esteemed panel and look forward to an engaging discussion this afternoon. Thanks, Walt.
Terrific. How about you, Steve M?
Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Mariano. I'm a Global VP of Endosurgical for FUJIFILM Medical Systems, USA. I'm based actually in Lexington, Mass. I guess first I'd like to say it's a pleasure to join this distinguished panel. Looking forward to the discussion. And I want to thank MassMEDIC and MassBio and obviously Triple Ring for including us and hosting this. I think it'll be a great discussion. As background, my main focus and responsibility right now is in diagnostic imaging technologies as well as advanced therapeutic devices, basically the development and launch of those products for Fujifilm, primarily in the flexible endoscopy and minimally invasive surgical space. I've got a long career in medical device development, both in large OEM, as a supplier to OEMs, and even in some startup companies. So I've had, fortunately, a few successful product launches and a lot of failures. So hopefully I can share some of my insights, and looking forward to a really interesting conversation. So thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Steve. Steve Weisner.
Hi. Should I share screen now or later?
Go for it, Steve.
Okay. Here we go. Hold on. Okay. Here we go. Okay. So my name is Steve Weisner. I am the president and CEO of Neon Coden Innovation Center, based in Japan, but I'm actually in East Cambridge, in fact. Just in terms of my background, I used to work for HP Medical when they did medical in the early years, then Philips Medical and Draeger Medical in Germany. I've also done 2 startups in the medical device space. So Neon Coden Innovation Center, what we do is early stage research. We're the R in R&D in a variety of medical devices, and most likely actually in the areas that you won't find on a neon coded company webpage, because that's the nice thing about this job, is to look into future areas. So whether it's sensors or diagnostics, whether it's doing AI, big data analysis, and also moving outside the hospital into home care. And thanks to MassMEDIC for inviting me, to Walt and Triple Ring, and the rest of my fellow speakers. So thanks.
All right, thanks, Steve.
Okay.
So when you're looking at the medical device space, it's huge, right? We could talk all day about this. We're going to try to touch on a few topics today, though, because we can't possibly talk all day. We've got about 35 minutes here. And so I want to start it off with, and we'll probably start with Eve here, but what I'm really interested in as a technologist, as sort of an innovator, creative person, and I'm sure our audience is as well, are other thoughts from experts, from people in the space about what they see as truly innovative products coming to the medical device space. You know, what's on the horizon, what's transformative. I'm not talking about incremental tech. I'm really talking on things that are going to make a difference. And then also, if you could, please touch on what's on your wish list, what's on your what if we could list. And Eve, I'd like to start with you and let you riff on that a little bit, and then we'll get over to Steve Mariano and Steve Weisner.
Sure, thanks, Ed. Thanks, Walt. So, you know, from our perspective, you know, from my role, we're looking for transformative, disruptive innovation, and there are some key areas that we've been very fortunate to have invested in and have been, you know, been successful in bringing them to market. One area is, you know, personalized implants. It's a major area that we've put a lot of emphasis on in Johnson & Johnson medical devices. Of course, if you think about it in many aspects, you know, especially in orthopedic implants, I mean, they go for a procedure, they have, you know, many sizes in the OR. You know, if you can have a personalized one that, you know, helps with the supply chain. But then if you think about, in some cases where we talk about regenerative medicine, in a product we just recently launched called TrueMatch, which is a 3D printed personalized scaffold for long bone defects. So, and we're taking it to the mandible reconstruction. And if you really, kind of, flip it again and ask yourself, why would this be truly transformative? If you think about someone having mandible reconstruction, it's a two procedure where they take the, they take the tibia and then they bend it and put it in the patient's mouth. But if you can have a 3D printed patient-specific implants that doesn't require, that's only one procedure, you take, MRI and, convert to an STL file and you send it to, to a 3D printer and you print a scaffold that is meant for that patient. So that's an area that is really big for us that we're focusing our attention on. Another area, talks about the robotics space. I mean, we know all companies, are focused on robotic platform, but we looked at it very different. Da Vinci has done a great job, but it's a big room robotic platform. We're looking at it, from perspective of having a modular unit, small footprint, bedside, really engaging with the orthopedic, with the surgeon. But attached to that, it's really, bringing advanced imaging, intraoperative imaging. If you're trying to resect a tumor, right now, a patient might get endosine green 24 hours before the procedure, and then, but if you can have non-dye specific that can actually identify critical structures, identify, say, margins of a tumor, we see that as truly transformative, because it's going to come through machine learning, because as the data acquisition continue, the system continue to identify more around what are the critical structure, what is a blood versus ureter, nerves present, buried in the tissue, so that it really gives at the end of the day, we want a procedure to end successfully without post-surgical complications.
Okay.
And then, good.
Terrific, thanks, Steve. Steve, how about you? You know, you work in the endoscope space, but there's probably even more that you're thinking about in terms of innovation. What's got you interested?
Sure. That's great, and building off of Eve's comments too, right? I think we're all working towards that, improving patient outcome. The thing that I think is of interest to me now, and what some of the areas that we're focused in, is that we all hear about the information age. I think maybe we're going to start calling it the information overload age. There is a lot of data, a lot of information that's being fed into our users, our customers, whether that's a surgeon or an endoscopist, et cetera. How do they make use of that data, and how do they basically become more effective, better treatment for patients? And so some of the areas relative to imaging and diagnostics is around giving them more information that's more valuable, right? And term it gets way overused as augmented reality, but it's like, how can we take that image and, as Eben said, give them more information about it? Maybe that's the tumor region and where they need to be focused. A technology that FUJIFILM's been developing is around our imaging enhancement, linked color imaging or blue light imaging, various different types of imaging modes that give the physician more information, and that really can help them make better decisions, more effective decisions, and then taking that to the next level and is artificial intelligence. How do we basically help them diagnose? We're seeing a lot in that area. That's a big, I think, area. I mean, it's almost too big, and trying to understand where it's really headed is a challenge. But some of the things we're looking at, and we've launched in Europe, not yet in the US, is a tool called Cat Eye. And that basically, using some of our imaging enhancement modes and working off a lot of data that we've collected on images, basically allow a surgeon, it really gives them, as they're progressing, say, through the colon, sort of real-time identification of potential polyps and lesions, and then signaling them both visually and audio as they're progressing. And we believe this will lead to better outcome and more efficient or more effective. Like, you can imagine an endoscopist who does maybe 6 procedures or 8 procedures a day. Is the first one as good as the last? Can they get some help, information, guidance, so that they can be more effective and hopefully lead to better patient outcome, right? We all know that you hate for them to miss that lesion that could become a problem someday, right? So we want to make sure we're giving them all that information. So I see those as really the trends of what's really going to be critical in the future is more effective information, I guess, and more efficient is really the focus. So.
Great, thanks. And what about you, Steve? What do you see out there that's interesting?
So I'll certainly echo my colleagues about in the AI space, but I'll maybe think about a little bit more different focus. Most of us look at what's called acute care in the hospital, and I'll admit that my company has 98% of their products in that space, but I'm really looking at chronic care also. So long-term chronic care. Unfortunately, part of the aging, population also means that people are older and living at home with various diseases of COPD, CHF, so on. So I think there's a real opportunity there to be able to apply some of these techniques that we were talking about. Not so much imaging, but perhaps some sort of other monitoring diagnostic. And the other thing I'll throw out is what I call the non-sexy area of humans. I think all of us tended to work, certainly early on and even currently, in heart, lung, brain. My advisor many years ago, when I was in grad school, wanted his students to work on the GI tract. None of us did, because it wasn't very sexy. But I will throw it out again. I think there's a lot of opportunity in the monitoring and diagnostic space. Imaging is sort of obvious, but even beyond that, just externally, monitoring GI and renal and coming up with useful information. And so I think there's a real opportunity there in terms of focus.
I think you make an interesting point there, Steve. We see certain practice areas that seem to be sort of orphaned, if you will, and GI is one. I think podiatry is another one where there's a dearth of podiatrists out there, but they need tools. And then the same, I would say, goes for neurology, not neurosurgeons, but neurologists as well, where, you know, what are the toolkits and what's the technology that we can bring to them? I think there's quite a bit of innovation happening in that space, but it seems like it's been a long time coming. But with that, I'm going to shift gears and move it around a little bit. We talked a lot about AI just a minute ago. And so as we're looking at AI and the power of big data, if you're a startup or even a larger med tech firm, and in a world where algorithms can't have enough data, where are we going to get it? How do we get it? It seems like we have silos of data, whether it's a healthcare organization or a large company, or maybe you're just a startup and you have your own data sets from your animal studies or from your small patient cohorts. But is that enough? And what are strategies? Where can we find more data to power AI and make it more specific? And let's start with you, Steve Weisner. Where are you sitting with that?
So I'll admit that's a real problem, and I'll tell you that. So I'm in the Boston area, and I've talked to many hospitals in the area, and one particularly large hospital, we won't name them, said they were absolutely happy to share data with us, and then proceeded to quote me a price that was well over 100K for their data. Now, perhaps my company maybe could afford that, but as a startup, that's just a non-starter. So I do agree that it is fundamentally a problem, and hospitals, good or bad, are realizing that there's a monetary value of their data. So I think it's a challenge. I will say there are a handful of databases that are out there that are shareable. The MIMIC database, which was created many years ago, has now moved to, I think, MIMIC 3 or something like that, is a physiological database. There's some databases of imaging that are public that you can get to, but I'll admit that it fundamentally is a problem. And as a startup, and I've done 2 startups with not a lot of money, I think that is challenging.
All right, yeah, I don't want to make this a policy discussion, but where are you sitting on that? And are there some creative solutions for small companies or larger companies to aggregate data and as you point out earlier, good data? Ebe? You're on mute, Ebe.
Thanks. I was just thinking about what Steve is talking about. For early stage companies, it's not easy because they barely have enough money to pay for the next animal study than to shell out 100K plus to the hospital. What about if they form a partnership? And we talk about AI, and they're really looking to advance that to the next level. They form a partnership, and in some cases, maybe profit sharing to try to get the large hospital, to release some of the data.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what about a marketplace is there room for a marketplace, maybe even amongst startups, for co-oping data and aggregating it? I mean, I know there's incredible resistance to share it because it's proprietary. Yeah. It's very specific, it's your asset, but is there a way to, sell this data marketplace? I know it's kind of a crazy idea, but just want to get your thoughts. Maybe Steve, Mariana, you've got some thoughts on that, or some of our other panelists?
Yeah, I guess from my perspective, Paul and the group, it is a challenge, and monetizing it is really what it comes down to, right? A market database is basically monetizing it, right? And so now you're saying, okay, there's value in my data, and I could sell it on, whether it's directly to Steve's company for 100 grand or to sell it to the marketplace. And I think there's could be something there, right? But we have to really understand, where's the market for the data, right? What are we really looking for? Who wants it? How much they're willing to pay for that, right? And as everybody's pointed out, startups really don't have a lot of money. My hope would be is collaborative type activities where, as Steve, you said, your customer, the hospital has a lot of data, and we go to our customers a lot. There's mutual benefit in that, right? So it's one of those, where do we find that mutual benefit? If you have the data and I have a potential solution, let's work together and let's use that data. And it could be startups come to maybe a large OEM that might have data or access to data, or it could be maybe medical societies that might be able to combine users or potential data sources. And it could even be some research with a particular, academic medical center or some research institution that's got the data. So I think ultimately there could be a marketplace for it, but again, it comes down to money. And the hope I have is that we can maybe look for more collaborative things where everybody's getting something out of the use of that data.
All right, thanks.
Yep.
Yeah, I was going to just throw one other thought in, that there are, at least in the United States, there are groups like NIH where they often pull together a number of hospitals and even multiple companies. And the understanding is that everybody gets to share the data and everybody gets to share the wealth, so to speak. And it's actually, it's funny, it's actually far easier for a small company to get like an NIH grant than it is for me to go try to get one. So that's one possibility. It's very focused, of course, that particular grant or study, but that is one possibility.
Thanks, Steve.
Yep.
So that brings me then to, that's a good transition, I think, for another sort of angle on what we're talking about today. And that is, and I'm trying to stay away from COVID conversation. I think we're all kind of tired of all that. But we are in COVID times, and we are still innovating. We're still advancing medical technology, medical devices. How do we develop our products in these times? How do we get these things to patients? How do we get these to the clinic? What are strategies to overcome access to patients, to hospitals, to clinics? What's the agency doing about that? Give me some of your thoughts, if you would, and we'll start with you, Steve Mariano, on what perhaps Fuji's doing to go and overcome our challenges in terms of our stay-at-home environment.
No, it's a really good topic, and I think we're definitely we're being forced to be more creative. I think we all are, right, in everything we do. And I think we have to be that way with regard to clinical experiences and customer interaction and patient interaction. One thing is an opportunity, I think, to work with the FDA more collaboratively, at least our experience. And to be honest, maybe even before COVID, I was starting to see some trends where they're seeming to be more willing to be collaborative, is to use a pre-submission approach. Talk to them about what you're trying to accomplish and how you're proposing to tackle that from a clinical aspect, and to get input. Because I think when we do that, they'll be a little bit more open because they understand the situation. Obviously, they're working in it too. And at least my recent experiences, they've been much more open to alternative approaches from a bench or animal model and testing that would support some filings or some regulatory approval aspects. So that's one thought I think we have, and we've had, I think, some shared success in, and that's potential.
Anything you can add there, Ebe? Thanks, Steve.
No, thanks. I'm just echoing what Steve just said about, FDA openness to engage with early stage companies, earlier. And, if you really also believe that you truly have a transformative solution, you can get what is called the breakthrough designation, which they work hand in hand with you at each stage to get this product to the patients. And of course, early access. Instead of in the past where we used to just quickly run into Europe for CE mark, they are now being, creative. So this period, I mean, FDA, just like anyone else, is being creative to find a way to engage with, early stage companies, even large stage companies. I mean, large companies, but there's an openness and a willingness to really, work with the ecosystem.
Okay. Thanks, Eve. What about you, Steve?
Yeah, I'll just echo some of what you said. But I think, maybe all of us, at least on the call, have learned that not to be afraid of the FDA. There's sort of this notion of they actually, the really good people working there being overworked, I should say, and in fact can really help you out and guide you. And I strongly almost require, in fact, that that people should take advantage of the pre-sub, because you can present, you get 1 hour, and you can give the FDA sort of what your plan is, and at least give them a set of a few questions that they'll address. And there's nothing binding there. You just, they can help you out. In terms of clinicals, I've certainly been hit just like everybody else has. We had a clinical that actually was in California that we did an in-hospital spot part and an out-of-hospital part. And the hospital decided that they were not going to have their patients come back to the hospital after they were discharged, right? They just did a telephone call and so on, which is really great for the patient, really kind of sucked for us because we couldn't get them back in to collect that data. So you have to be creative. The other thing I'll throw out is that other countries have, you may not have the luxury, certainly not as a startup, but if you do have connections out of the country, I can run, because I'm work for a Japanese company. Japan's done a much better job at COVID than the United States has. And so some number of my clinicals are actually running in Japan.
Oh, interesting.
Because we were allowed back in. They're obviously still cautious, but as a startup, that's challenging, but it is possible.
Is that your experience too, Steve?
Yes, definitely. We're doing more in Japan right now than we're able to do in the U.S. So I know it is a challenge for smaller companies, but building international KOL networks can help maybe give you some access to some things that could be done elsewhere. So that's something to keep in mind.
I wanted to go back to a discussion about FDA. About a year ago, maybe about 2 years ago, I was in a panel with the assistant director or deputy director of the FDA. And after the panel, he reached out to me and wanted to see if we can actually host FDA reviewers in our J labs, because they wanted to get a sense for what are small companies going through, also understand the product development. Because some of them just came out of the, some of them have just come out of the university, have no industrial experience, and they, after 3 days engagement, I mean, that we had about, I think about 20 reviewers spent, about 2 days or so in the J lab in Houston, and we walked them through. We had, a lot of, direct engagement. They really felt that they learned a lot, and they also felt I call it the pain, to be in the shoes of these early stage entrepreneurs. So I'm getting a warm vibe of FDA really wanted to work with a lot of early stage companies and entrepreneurs to really bring these solutions to the patients.
Okay, thank you. So shifting gears a little bit, one of the things that I want to touch on here and get your thoughts on is, here at Triple Ring, it seems like every single medical device we have is connected. Everybody is even some things that are really surprising. Why would you'll think about some sort of therapeutic device or a surgical device, and even it's connected. With telemedicine being so important during COVID, is Is telemedicine going to be an elastic event for us in terms of how we practice medicine, or is it going to be plastic? Is it going to recover? Is it what are your thoughts on that?
I would just say telemedicine is here and it's going to be here to stay. It's here with us, and how best we leverage it is what we continue need to be thinking of. But it's not going back. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I guess, from my perspective, I think clearly we had a huge uptick, right, in telemedicine right now. I remember seeing some statistics of, it was like 2% of their meetings were remote versus like 90% for a lot of physicians. I don't know if we'll stay at this level because I think there's some things that are missing there. Clearly from a patient perspective, I'm not sure. I mean, in some cases it probably is great, but I think a lot of patients still want to have some level of interaction. And then we also obviously need some level of diagnostics, right? So you usually have to go someplace for that. Hopefully advances in, we'll say remote or in-home diagnostics can maybe help mitigate some of that. But I do think it will be a bit elastic. It's here to stay. It's definitely going to be a lot more than what it used to be. But I don't think we're going to completely shift over to sort of that remote type provider model, so to speak. So.
Yeah, I'll jump in here. It certainly is here. It's certainly elastic. The one thing I would say is, now reimbursement is starting to catch up on that. So now you actually can get reimbursed, albeit not a lot, but there is reimbursement on telemedicine, and that actually will help fuel research because we haven't touched on it yet, and perhaps this isn't the right discussion for this, but ultimately as a med device provider, you better figure out how to do your reimbursement early on. And so in that case, in this particular case, there are now codes for doing that. So I think that will help us all out, actually.
Now, I just want to take on what Steve talked about. I mean, the reimbursement is key. I mean, for early stage companies, don't wait till you get a, either 510K clearance or, PMA approval before you start looking into reimbursement. You have to even dial this into your, into your clinical studies. Otherwise, I have seen many companies get a 510K cleared product and sitting on the shelf.
There's another really good question here on the board that I want to put forward, and that is the NIH is adverse to dispersed clinical studies, not even trials, from our experience. Conducting it outside the country might need extraordinary justification, regardless of COVID, which startups might not be able to achieve. Any thoughts on that? Overcoming essentially, how to be able to conduct studies outside of the country that are relevant to the NIH, probably to the FDA as well. Let's start with, you, Steve Weisner.
Sure. So yeah, I was thinking when I did mention NIH, it was certainly in country, right? But FDA is actually, my experience is FDA is not adverse to data that comes in from out of the country. You have to figure out how to fund it, which maybe is where the point comes from. But assuming that you could find a way to fund it, if you have a reasonable study at, good hospital, they're going to accept that data. And so we've had, I know at my company, we've had, a variety of different studies that were done in Japan and other places, and we've submitted 510Ks. They like you to do maybe one study within the US, but only really more to understand that it's safe, right? So the effectiveness can be proved out of country, and they get a little leery of the safe part, and they sort of want to see something very simple in country.
Yeah,
How about
and
you,
also,
Steve? Steve, you mentioned that you've been doing some work in Japan with Fuji. So again, you've got a foothold there, obviously, with
Right,
your
right.
company. But
Yeah, I guess from my experience, it has been, you know, the intent of doing some clinical work outside of the country is to sort of drive the overall business, not necessarily to say we're going to do this data for FDA and then present it to them. It's been more, well, we need data, we have access, let's get the data. And then that sort of is used across the globe. And so I think Steve mentioned, I don't think the FDA is necessarily resistant to that data. You know, so wherever you can get the data, it's going to help move that device forward and that product forward. And it may be that you're maybe getting it released somewhere elsewhere in the globe before the US, but that'll definitely help as well, because now you've got data. And one thing I might mention too is if you release in one region of the world, the opportunity to collect post-market data is really valuable as well. So you can leverage that to then expand globally. So I know these are big issues and probably more for us big companies to deal with than a startup. But I would just say that data is valuable wherever you can get it. It's going to be valuable. If you can you know, get the data, you're gonna make progress from a business perspective.
great point.
let's put a caution there. You know, data is valuable, but where you get it is important. You know, and I've seen some, you know, early stage companies go to, without mentioning some, you know,
Yep.
you know, what you call it, Caribbean, some, you know, or the,
Yep.
you know, and get a data there. And we generally don't, J&J will not take that data.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So where you get the
Right.
data is important.
Right.
So Eve, with your company though, at J&J, you've got a huge worldwide footprint. How do you guys handle that?
I mean, we could do a study in, you know, of course, Australia is very, you know, open, and the data, if you have a KOL in that part of the world, and we mentioned Japan, so we're looking globally to do where we can get the best data and shying away from, you know, some, yeah.
And Eve, I think that's a really good point, that collecting data, you know, you should obviously be taking a GLP type approach to any data you're getting, regardless of where it's done. And just because that country doesn't require any kind of rigor to what you're doing, you should be bringing that to wherever you're going to collect that data. And that's a really good point.
Okay. You know, I'd love to keep on asking you guys questions and keep on expanding. We're kind of out of time. I took a little vacation there for a few minutes, but I really appreciate your contributions. You guys have been really fun to have this conversation with. I think there was a lot of good information out there. There are a lot of connections that have come across in the chat over here. And so I think I don't know, Rachel, we'll figure out how to get maybe some of these connections over to the team. You may have seen them yourselves as these have been coming across. But again, I want to thank you guys a lot, and I'm going to turn it back over to Rachel to wrap us up.
Yeah, no, I will just echo Walt's thanks and say thank you, Walt, and again, Triple Ring for helping us pull this together. It's been a fantastic program. I would say if there are more questions you have for our speakers, you can reach out on LinkedIn. You can send them over to me at rachel@massmedic.com. We'll make sure to connect you. We do this program monthly, so our town hall is back next month with a section actually all about breakthrough product designation. So we're going to have a bunch of folks come on and talk about the changes and what that means and what it looks like to go ahead and try to get the breakthrough product designation and how that affects reimbursement and your pathway forward. So I think you're definitely going to want to be a part of that one. So keep your eyes open for a promo on that. But otherwise, Steve, Eve, you guys are fantastic. We did record this program, so I'll make sure all of you get it in an email from us. And thank you all, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
All right, thanks,
Thank
Rachel.
you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, everyone.